Very good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
So, where were we in the last class? Externalities and public goods. I think we had finished Coase's theorem. And we had also discussed the public goods. So, the first thing that we can do today is revisit game theory as some of you have requested. And to begin with, let me send you on your WhatsApp. I've just sent you a case study that has to do with the game theory. And of course, we had to discuss game theory with regards to the prisoner's dilemma, which I had left pending. Okay. And of course, some questions which I had asked you to solve. If you have solved it, fine. Otherwise, we will solve it now.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes. Somebody was saying something. Have you received your cases? If yes, let me know.
No, sir.
Yes,
Check
sir,
your,
it is there in the WhatsApp group.
yeah, check the WhatsApp group. So if one person has received, that means everybody has received. So we have no problem in that. We now move to the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is a game of imperfect information. So, what type of game? Imperfect and incomplete information. Okay. And it is a game of non cooperation. So there is an incentive to cheat on any cooperative agreement. Whenever there is a cooperative and there is an agreement, there is an incentive for cheating. If you do not, obviously, the prisoners who have been caught must have had a pact that they will keep silent. But if they confess and they do not keep silent, then they are cheating the other. And for that cheating, they are going to get a benefit. And the best evidence that the police can rely on will be one of them confessing. There's no better evidence than that. And obviously, for that reason, they are kept in separate room without communication. And they are informed that if they confess, they will get less punishment than the other fellow. Obviously, each has to choose between confess and not confess. And this being a punishment, they are all in negative, minus 20 years if both of them confess, minus 5 years for the one who confesses, and if the other doesn't confess, minus 25 years. If both of them do not confess, minus 10, minus 10. If the other fellow confesses, then minus 25, minus 5. This will be the prisoner's dilemma. Obviously, for each player, confess is a dominant strategy. And you can reason this out. Yeah.
Extremely sorry for interrupting you, but the
No,
slide
you
is
must.
not visible.
Yeah, the slide is not visible.
The control slide is not visible. The slide the that
Okay,
visible
it's the wrong
is
slide, which is it? No problem. Then let me bring out the slide. हाँ बोलो. ठीक ठीक हाँ ठीक. Slide is there now.
Yes, sir.
There's one fellow who is trying to mute me. I'll just throw him out of the. I'll just throw you out of the meeting. Don't worry. So this is the prisoner's dilemma, which we were discussing.
So you are on mute.
Let me throw the fellow out. I'm just turning off, making everyone an attendee in this meeting also. So now they will not be able to do any hanky panky. Of course, I will punish the fellow. I will not give him today's attendance. Coming to the prisoner's dilemma, it is clear that this is a game of imperfect information. There are two criminals who have accomplices in crimes, and they are caught by the police, but there is not enough evidence to convict them of any serious charge. The best evidence that the police can get their own confession. The chief goes to the criminal, who is now in separate rooms with no communication between them, and tells them that if they confess to the crime, they would get smaller punishment than the other fellow. And obviously, the second one is also given the same information. Now they have to choose between whether to confess or not to confess. And all the payoffs here will be in negative sign because these are punishments. So the lesser, the better. And you can apply the max-min reasoning here. Obviously, you will have two different matrices for each of the prisoners. And if you apply the max-min, you will come to a dominant strategy, which is to confess, because that is where they get the best benefit out of the lot. So this is the answer. If anybody still has any doubts, they can ask. Otherwise, we move on. Is there any other game theory for which I have not given you an answer? You can ask me now. If the answers are there with you, fine. This is, of course, in response to some queries which had come. I thought that this much you can manage on your own, because if you do apply the same max-min, which I have already explained to you, you will get this same answer. Any further questions? I've given you a case also, which you can go through. This case has come previously in the exam and can, of course, come again. There is no issue there. So you should know how to solve it. And if there is any doubt, you can ask me how to solve the case study. I've given you the case study. I can give you some other questions to practice if you want to. Since you do not have the book, I can take the picture of the numerical problems and send it to you. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Fine. I'll be doing that. Any other question which is not clear to you in game theory, you can ask me now. I will explain. So we have completed most of the things. And we now move on to the last part of the last topic.
Sir,
Yeah.
so I have one request. Sir, before mid-sems, can you please reserve 2 classes for clearing our doubts in the syllabus we are going to read for mid-sems? One or
I,
two
I,
classes of whatever is feasible.
I have absolutely no problem in this, what you have requested, and you don't have to wait for a special class also. Right now, if you want, you can ask. Obviously, I
Sir,
understand you will have to study and then only more queries will come to you. So whenever
yes,
you
sir.
need, even if it is not scheduled, say after 3 o'clock, if you want, I can schedule. So because it
No,
is
sir.
obviously, had the college been open, it is possible for you to walk in after 3 o'clock to the chamber and ask questions. That is not possible now.
Sir, I'm
So
not
if
saying for a separate class. I'm saying that schedule me
I am
हमारी जो
giving you
class.
that offer. A separate
Okay, okay,
meeting
okay.
can always be arranged. And during the class also, whenever you feel like asking a question, anytime, that is the first priority. Then teaching comes. You understand me?
Yes. Okay,
So
sir.
if
Thank you,
I
sir.
don't need to make a special class for this. Any class when I'm taking, I ask you to become interactive, ask questions. Absolutely no issue. And you don't have to wait for a special class of doubt clearing session. Obviously, that will also be there, no problem. Whenever you want, you can ask,
Okay.
including special sessions also. I will definitely, before the exam, I'll be scheduling it. If you want to go back and revise something in the class, absolutely no problem. We have almost finished the syllabus, only little bit is left. And then, of course, I intend to do some case studies and some other things that also I'll be doing. If you don't have questions, then what will I do? I'll be doing them, right? So you don't have to
Okay,
wait
sir.
for a special class, but they will all be there. Whenever you want to uh, have, you just have to give me a call or send me a message on the WhatsApp. And looking at both of our convenience, we will do it. So now we move
Sure,
on
sir.
to, yeah. So now we move on to the last part, the new economy. Okay. So I will have to open another slide. Obviously, this slide is for game theory, and another slide has to be opened. I try to send you the slides also today. So now we have the slide that we are going to cover as the last part of our syllabus. And we are going to talk about the new economy. And the reason for discussing the new economy is for you to understand the distinctive characteristic of the new economy, analyze if the old principles are rendered useless in this current scenario, understand the new business models that have come up, appreciate the changes required as far as the micro and macro policies are concerned. So let us start by the definition. What do we understand by the new economy? It is the outcome of information revolution. What we have had in the last few decades, you know, during my days when I was a student, it was known as the nuclear age, because that was something new and a lot of activities centered around the nuclear activities, from electricity production to fighting wars to everything. Nowadays, what you have experienced and what we have seen in the very recent past is information revolution, communication revolution. What used to be impossible is not only possible, but day-to-day life. Whether it is, you will not have experienced it, of course, but I have experienced it. I was working in export-import. And that means I had to communicate with countries like US and South America who operate at night. And we used to operate during the day. So we used to give communication. That is, of course, even today that is there, but there is now the advantage of email. Otherwise, at midnight, you will receive telephone calls. For them, it is midday. And these were all very great inconveniences because, and you are not in the office at that time. Maybe the call has gone to the office number, which it often did. And they were asking for me, and I was peacefully asleep at home. So all those problems have been solved, and now it is possible to send an email, and at convenience they will open. At our convenience, we will open. So what they communicate today, we will open tomorrow. And there is no problem, unless, of course, you need to meet. Then we decide on an evening when it is morning there, or evening here, or in a morning, early morning when it is morning here. Then that is possible. So this internet and the World Wide Web, which has come about, has made the information revolution possible. And these are three different distinguished characteristics which come out of this. One is the leaning on intangibles. Now, a lot of service-oriented things have come out. If you look at the industry-wise benefits, then now the best benefits are for IT. IT people, they are now into almost all businesses, from law to other businesses, from management. IT people are required. Why? Because they will make possible to bridge this communication gap. Now, if you have consultancies, they can be coming through the internet. So you need the internet, you need somebody to set up your internet to have everything communication proper. Another characteristic is it is global in nature now. Whatever you do, if you host a website, it is not confined to one place. It is possible to see the website. You can see what they are doing, and I can see what we are doing. Yeah. So we find that they are intensely interlinked. So the new economy is a network economy. This okay. there is where is that marketplace? On the internet. Retailers, B2B, all on the internet, business to business. What you important, something like encyclopedia now, it's there on the CD in a pen drive, and you do not need anything more than that. So we find that the new economy is thus a network economy. Now, what I do, everybody understands, everybody, it's communicated so fast that what is done in here goes on. So we have now information goods. And the characteristic is high fixed cost, but low variable cost of reproduction. Non-excludability, and this we already understand non-excludability. Internet, you cannot stop anyone from, and that results in market failure. Of course, in certain you can create passwords and logins and try to do it in a limited way, but even that, if somebody is able to download, he can share it with n number of people. So obviously, with this challenge of non-excludability, you need more IT service to make your product more secure. And that means you have to have more people coming in. And of course, pricing is value-based because MC will be near zero. So that is another feature of information goods. So pricing will be depending on the value that the customer gives to that particular product. Okay. And we see a lot of economic activities now centered around these problems. And that is why we have a lot of things on the internet where we have this value-based pricing, because they target exclusive people and send it exclusively to them, because otherwise they will not get the benefit if it is made public, because there is absolutely no cost involved in sharing the product or service. So internet major new entrant in this period. The new economy is driven by this internet and the World Wide Web. So when we talk of definition, the new economy is defined by its three distinguishing characteristics. It is leaning on information, knowledge, ideas, etc. It is global and it is intensely interlinked. That is the new economy. New economy has these three characteristics. Now let us look at the network and network industries. Now the new economy rests on information and communication, which in turn are dependent on information goods. Information goods are, of course, digitalized information such as recorded music, software, encyclopedia, and directories. And the characteristic of the information goods are very different from the goods and characterize the old industrial economy. These can be thought of as provision of information goods, which entails high initial fixed cost, just like the gestation period of a production. And the variable cost of reproduction is very low, making the marginal cost almost zero. And therefore, the principle of marginalism on which the traditional microeconomy was built now has to be seen afresh. And the low cost of copying intellectual property leads to situations similar to that of non-excludability in case of public goods, thereby resulting in market failure. with the availability of information in abundance due to easy access, the user looks for services to filter the communication which is required. And that is why Google is so popular, because Google does this. It does the filtering and gives you what you need. So this is also a facility. Information goods that offer this facility are highly successful, and pricing will be value based, so rather than cost based, because we have seen the marginal cost is low or nil. So what is the worth of the product to the buyer is what will be important. And here the worth to advertisers and the others who can come in or who can tap information about the users, that all comes in. That is why there is a privacy policy, and lot of internet providers who offer free service, the economy on which they are working is very important to understand. For example, Google, where does Google earn its money from? WhatsApp, where does WhatsApp earn its money from? They sell what? Advertising. They sell it to commercial users. They sell it to, because for the commercial users there is value, because they will be able to make profit. They sell the data of the customer. All these things are generating the economy. So now in the new scenario, we have a position where economy is being used for the purpose of benefit by first offering free service, connecting a lot of people, and then selling that data, advertising to them, giving them information, and so on. So information goods becomes very, very important here. And when we look at all the networks to be real or virtual, the more viable the production and usage, the value to each size of the network, the features of network. So when we talk of network externality, we are meaning each user who is on the network, and it rises to a rate much higher than the increase in the size. So increasing utility is derived to the user also, because now through one attempt, you can communicate to everybody. For example, I send one message on the WhatsApp and everybody receives it. The larger it is, the more benefit I get, because otherwise I would have to sit and send to everybody. That would take hours. So we have now such situations, and that is the meaning of externality. And how does it affect demand? Demand for a product is influenced by the total demand for the product. So what is happening now? This total demand is going up. Yeah, that's gone. So we have a situation where there is a network externality, and this network externality is what creates the value. So in industries which are providing this information goods, they are called network industries. And if we look at the network, it's a connection between all the nodes, and it could be real or virtual, because it could, you could be a node, because if you are connected. It could be virtual if you are offline. Larger the network size, more viable the production and usage. This is simple, because if there's a large number of users in the network, you can be reached. So it increases the usability and it influences the total demand for the product in no time. So the value to each user begin as the network rises at a rate much higher than the rate of increase in the size of network. Because now all other stakeholders also get interested. So if we would like to define it for all networks, be they real or virtual, the larger the network size, the more viable will be the production and usage. And the value to each user of being in the network rises at a rate much higher than the increase in size of the network. And the feature of network is called network externality. And if we talk about definition, the increasing utility of a user derived from the consumption of a product as the number of users who consume the same product increases. This is like increasing the return on scale on a demand side. So we see that network externality now has become very important concept. And as the network demand curve is now in this shape of an inverted U. It first increases till it reaches the peak, and then if it becomes uncontrollable, it starts decreasing. Now, what is the impact on industry structure? So when we talk of the new economy, we have to think of its impact on industry structure. The intensity of competition in an industry is the outcome of these forces: the competition amongst competing firms, the buyer power in the industry, the power of suppliers, the threat of potential goods, and the threat posed by substitute goods. So this is nothing but 5 forces that you have already studied at least 2 or 3 times. So this is the intensity of competition. If you recall, we talked about intensity of rivalry. That is competition. So what is going to be the impact on the industry structure of this new economy? So the information revolution now threatens the traditional value chain at all levels. As the traditional concept of industry structure, owning a dedicated sales force or a delivery fleet, these were formidable barriers to entry. Now, this is no more a challenge. Corporates are not constrained by suppliers available within a geographical limit. If you see, if you place an order, for example, on either Amazon or Flipkart or Myntra, if you notice, you will find the same fellow is coming and delivering for all 3 of them. Why? Because now they have been able to, through information, integrate everything. So when we talk of e-versions, the vertical integration value chain, that is getting severed now. And readers can unbundle the content of the newspaper, classified as separate, and of course, revenues are now different for online products. If in books, now e-books are available, that is about a separate price. So when we separate the traditional vertical integration of the value chain, we find that we now have a different scenario. So the phenomenon of deconstruction is the severing of the traditional vertically integrated value chain, and this is the outcome of information revolution. So what has information revolution done? It has the integrated value chain, which used to cost substantial to the customer, is now disintegrated. Companies like Amway, RCM, they had their foundation on the fact that you don't have to pay this additional money to your middlemen, distributors, wholesalers, because we are doing away with them. Now you don't need even them. You can do away, you can directly place the order to the manufacturer and get it directly from there. So that increases the threat from substitute, because now when you go ahead, you'll find substitute is now possible and very much there. And when we talk of information-based industries dealing with information goods, when we talk of brokerage and other things, now it's no constraint. Geographical boundaries are no constraint. The physical carrying and delivering is no constraint. So there's a lot of change due to the electronic medium. Obviously, a lot of things have therefore scaled down. So we have seen businesses in a lot of areas have considerably shrunk, and they are going to shrink further in the future because of this communication revolution. We have, of course, seen new business opportunities also rising. A lot of people have made a lot of money, be it on the internet or be it otherwise. A lot of things have also become obsolete. So the change in scenario has resulted in a transformation, and we must appreciate and understand the transformation. So now the old economy of scale which occurred on the supply side, now in network industry, that is appearing on the demand side. How? Because now you are able to integrate that side also. You can create demand by integrating a lot of people on a platform. When we look at the OEI's demand, these are original equipment industries. So for example, if a business of making trucks, they will need tire. Obviously, they will not make tires because it's a very separate and distinct activity. It will be made by the tire company. So they will supply the tires, and they are known as original equipment industry. So they supply the tire. There are many other such products. So when you buy a product, we buy, and this is a B2B activity, that is business to business activity. And when we look at the downward sloping of the shifts, when the factors change in the old economy, the new industry, the demand increases as the accumulated increase and a positive feedback chain is created. So obviously it gives rise to value because it is scarce now. In network industry, it is abundance which gives rise to value. The more you have, the more value it is because it is information. If you have more information about certain things, the more value the customer will give to you. Obviously, one thing that we have experienced in this communication revolution has been rise and fall of the dot-coms. So the dot-coms emerged with products and services on the internet, and obviously they attempted to realize the external network externalities, and there is ignored the result of outcome, and that outcome is the winner takes all situation. So while some of the companies have become established and very rich, there are many who have fallen on the wayside, and that is where the dot-coms have gone. So a lot of communication companies have also finished. There was a time when Satyam Communication, a lot of other communications has come. Now they are gone because they have not been able to keep up with the latest trends. While some initial dot-com companies emerged successful like Amazon, eBay, Google, Yahoo, MSN, because they realize the network effects. So unless and until you realize the effect and you are able to keep up with time, you will fail. And that is the learning from the rise and falls of dot-com companies. Now let us look at the fundamental laws and concept of the old economy. Obviously, we have already seen these. Profit maximization was one of them. Economies of the scale resulted in one or few winners. The demand estimation and elasticities are important. The cost estimation is essential. And of course, if you don't ignore these, and you will finish. And that is what happened to the dot-coms. So when we look at the same things today, we find that there is a difference. Pricing, for example. Earlier in the old economy, pricing could never be conceived as zero, because a zero price means no economic activity. Today, the concept has changed. We saw that Jio was introduced. I will give you a lot many other examples, but this example is clearly in front of you. When Jio was introduced, it had zero pricing, and they continued this for almost 6 months, in some cases even more. With zero pricing, the concept of economy was challenged. How can you have a economic activity if there is no inflow of money? Now, in this 6 months, we know the cost that was incurred by Jio. They distributed free SIMs. They paid the middlemen who were selling these. They employed a lot of people in sales and other activities. Now they gave away free SIMs. They created a huge database, which was, of course, of no use because that database was with them, true, but they were unable to tap this database. There was no revenue coming out of it. So in 6 months, how much did they earn and from where did they earn? Is a question. Obviously, what they had built in the 6 months is a huge database of people who were willingly giving their phone numbers. Phone numbers were created by the company only, who were willingly giving their details, Aadhaar details, everything was going to the company. But that is also not earning them anything. So in 6 months, where are they earning from? What is the revenue? There is no advertisement also, but they are advertising huge posters. From where is the money coming? This is the challenge to the old economy. Under old economy, you cannot even conceive it. You cannot explain it. But at the end of the 6 months, they made a tidy profit without taking any money from the customer. And that profit occurred on the stock exchange. They earned almost 3 million rupees. Sorry, 300 million rupees on the stock exchange, because their stock value had risen exponentially, because everybody could see the future. Even if half the customers were retained, and obviously people who have phones and who have inserted SIM, they are not going to all of them throw out. Half of them will keep. Then a huge monthly turnover will be arising. And of course, they attracted the customers also with better pricing, industry pricing, and through this way, they were able to convert almost 80% of the customers, and revenue started flowing in after 6 months. But by the end of the 6 months, they had already made a neat profit. All this is possible under the new economy, not under the old economy. So the fundamental laws have still to be kept in mind. Profit maximization is the bottom line. The people who made WhatsApp, they made a profit by selling WhatsApp to Facebook. But when they were creating the WhatsApp and attracting a lot of people on the platform, they were not earning anything. Their earning only came when they sold it. Many other examples as there. Google spent a lot of money in making the search engine and making it free and popular to everybody. Once the popularity came, then they started money. Then they went into Chrome, and there also they did the same thing. While Windows were coming at either a pirated copy or at a cost, Chrome was giving Android for free. And therefore, we have more Android phones than we have Windows phones. And those who enter second, they are always losers. So the first was Android, and therefore we see a lot of Android phones, which is very popular. So even in the new era, we have to think of profit maximization, where the inflows are going to come from. The economies of scale. Of course, I have some friends who are thinking of these in the new scenario with law also. You can create a virtual lawyer. You can create virtually at almost no cost to the buyers. They can take up the case and fight. So all these things are happening in the current scenario. But you have to keep these four things very much. Profit maximization, how your inflow is coming from, where you have to think. Economies of scale, which results in one or few winners. You cannot think that every business will be successful. If in fact data suggests that only 5% of the number of new businesses which come about succeed, demand estimation and elasticities are still important. They cannot be ignored. Cost estimation is always essential. So these things, those who ignore, they ignore at their own peril, and that is what leads to their demise, as it did with the case of dot-coms. Now, of course, we have new internet pricing models, and we have some of them are flat rate pricing, usage sensitive pricing, number of usage, and your price goes up. Transaction based pricing, priority pricing, precedence model, and smart market mechanism model. So when we look at these models, we will understand. So when we talk of flat rate, it's for a fixed period and it is one amount and doesn't change. And for a limited amount of data, like it is being practiced by many of the telecom providers. Usage sensitive pricing is when there are two-part tariffs. There is one part which is of course maybe at a higher speed, and the other part which comes at a lower speed, and the pricing is based on the time taken to consume it. So the cost of implementing the system is of course very high, because you have got to know exactly when you have to switch over. So there is a additional mechanism which has to be there. Then we have transaction based pricing. Now this is a variant of the usage sensitive pricing. In this model, the transaction is the basis, not the user. However, this is not yet very popular in India, and this has, for example, in certain countries, Amazon and other internet sellers, if you the amount while you are doing the transaction with them, they will not charge you anything, because obviously they are making money by selling you the product or the service. So that transaction-based pricing is based on that. Then there is priority pricing, where you become a priority customer and your tariff is obviously just like the electricity bill, where the users pays a fixed for certain units, and then the higher you consume, you move on to the next level. So depending on the amount of quantity consumed, your pricing goes up. Then there is a charging on the basis of social cost. So this is also based to the peak load pricing. So the users during the peak period pays a congestion cost, because that is the office hours. A lot of people are going to use it. So at that time, if you consume, it will be more. This is also not very popular in our country, and they use the same precedence model. The existing users are protected by the determining the priority of different applicants. So depending on who you are, what you are, precedence model is given out. Smart market mechanism tries to look at dynamic bidding from the entire system. Obviously, we now have more than this. We are aware of the fiber and the pricing of the fiber, and a lot of other value additions being given with the service, like access to platforms where you use high consumption entertainment and business purposes. All those value additions are being done with the internet, and of course they are being sold to the customer. So we have almost come to the end, and we will continue with the role of government in the next class. Okay, and this is of course the end, and then we'll discuss something else. So from the next class onwards, I look forward to a lot of queries from you from the past, and we are almost through the. Now just let me take the attendance. But before that, let me switch off the recording.